Hi, welcome to Shared Frequencies and the Space Between, where heart meets brain and life happens in the messy middle.
We're two best friends navigating a new chapter, sharing a space, finding a rhythm and tuning into life's transitions.
This is a space for deep and meaningful conversations about growth, connection, and everything in between. It's about learning to embrace the chaos while finding harmony, whether that's between the heart and mind or just two friends figuring it out together.
So, if you've ever found yourself navigating the space between emotions and logic, comfort and change, or who you were and who you're becoming, you're in the right place.
Let's tune in to today's frequency.
Hello and welcome to episode 2 of our brand new podcast, Shared Frequencies and the Space Between. And we've creatively named this one, Finding Our Frequencies.
We have.
So my name's Dawn.
I'm Elle.
And if you want to know just a little bit more about us, then, and you haven't already, you can go back and listen to episode 1. If not, we will just crack on with kind of today's episode.
Yeah, well, let's do it.
As we've explained, we're doing this kind of raw and unedited.
Yeah.
For now, at least until we learn how to edit. Then
Indeed,
then we can go for maybe a bit of editing. But I like raw and unedited. First episode went so well. It was so good. I want to stick with it. So yeah. So today we're going to TikTok.
Oh yeah, no, that's one of the things we're going to have to get used to is TikTok, because neither of us are on TikTok. But our intention is that you'll be able to find us on TikTok and Instagram, and we have an email set up, and there will be a website, and YouTube.
YouTube at some point, probably initially without any video.
Yes, no, this is not video recorded; it's just audio recorded.
But maybe down the line, you know, when we're all famous and raking it in, and we can afford a studio and all that jazz, as it were.
And all that jazz.
Yeah, and hopefully, anybody who's kind of tuning in from the United States will still be able to find us on TikTok, because
that's the thing right now.
That is absolutely
the thing right now.
Absolutely the thing right now. So anyway, so
2025 off to a flying start.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Let's not. We don't. We'll be here.
Yeah, and talking about starts, let's talk about our start.
Our start for today. So we're going to talk about where we met, first thoughts, why we ended up connecting, how we ended up connecting. Just a bit of backstory on our friendship and how it came.
Why we think our friendship is strong enough to move into a 2-bedroom flat together.
Yes. Yeah. So all of that. So let's just get things underway. Let's just get going with it.
Let's do it.
With kind of the first topic for today, and that was when and where we first met.
The 2nd of March, 2020.
Yes.
I was.
Absolutely.
I was 2 weeks before the very first national lockdown here in Scotland.
Yes.
We had applied and both got the same job.
Yes.
Which was, I don't remember how many applicants they said that there had been.
Was it 90? I've got 90 in my head. Yeah. For 2 spots.
And then, yes, for 2 spots.
Yeah.
And we were the ones that got it.
We were the successful applicants, yeah.
We were. So, and the job that we both got was it doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't exist anymore.
That's because you left and there's just nobody could keep the standard going.
We left.
Yes.
We started on the same day and we left on the same day to go do completely different things.
We did.
Yeah. We are very in sync. We are very shared frequencies.
Yes.
Although you are a little bit behind me.
2 weeks normally.
Yeah, about 2 weeks.
Yeah. And then I have to play a bit of catch up. I normally catch up and then drop 2 weeks behind again.
Yeah. So yeah, the very first day we met was the 2nd of March, 2020.
When we walked into the reception at Visit Scotland's head office.
You know, I don't remember that. Like when I think back and I was like, what was the first time where I like saw done?
Yeah.
Like what was the first time where I like catalogued you in my head?
Okay.
It wasn't that.
Oh, okay.
And it wasn't up in the meeting room where we had our training.
Yeah.
You were living in a hotel just around the corner.
Yeah.
And I had gotten an Airbnb a bit further down the road. But we agreed to meet up and go for dinner. Was it that first night?
We did, yes.
And I was coming from, it was near a shopping centre in Edinburgh.
It was.
And I was...
Ocean Terminal.
Yes, we can be very specific. Yeah. It was Ocean Terminal in Leith in Edinburgh. And I came walking from the sort of top end where the offices were. And you came walking from the hotel where you were. And you were wearing your little, it wasn't the pork pie hat, but you were wearing your little combination pork pie fedora.
Yeah, I'm okay with it, pork pie hat.
With a pork pie hat, so you came walking sort of towards me, and we'd had a great day.
Yeah.
And I don't remember who suggested going out for dinner. I feel like that would be something I would have come up with, but it could equally have been you. I don't remember.
Yeah, see, I'm a blank as to who would have suggested we go out for dinner.
I was feeling very uncomfortable. Like when I was driving down to Edinburgh that morning, I was on the phone to my sister. So I was talking to her hands-free in the car as I was driving down. And that was the first day that they had conversations in Denmark about lockdowns. And my sister was very pregnant. So this was beginning of March. And my nephew is born beginning of May. So she was very pregnant. And she was home. She'd been sent home. I don't remember if she wasn't on bed rest, but she definitely wasn't allowed to do too much moving about. And then the bank, my sister works in a bank, and they had made the decision that she was high risk, having people coming in and out. So she was at home, and there were all of these conversations about lockdowns, and Denmark was the first country to actually do a lockdown. And she was very scared. And I had dropped my dog off at, she was at home. That week she was at home. And my friend, whom I was living with at the time, maybe she will do a guest appearance on this podcast. Who knows?
Hope so.
Who knows?
I hope so.
But
we'll have to prepare our audience for that one.
Yes, we'll definitely do a disclaimer on that episode. So she was there, and then I had a dog walker to come. So that was sort of like the first time I left her with other people like that. I think. I mean, the Airbnb that I had was comfortable enough. It was a comfortable little space in Leith. But it was just, the whole situation was just, I wasn't comfortable.
Yeah.
So like I welcomed a distraction and going out for dinner. So like our dinner actually that time, like that's, when I think back, I'm like, that's the first time where I like catalogued you.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, for me it was literally within like moments that when we first met at the office when we started. That was the like, because backstory to kind of that was that about 2 months prior to us starting.
January. I had my interview in January, end of January. I want to say like the 20th or 21st of January.
Were you the last?
I was the last one because I was the last one. So I did my interview and drove home, and I was about an hour and a half from the office to where I lived at the time here in Fife. And I had literally just walked in the door and had said hi to my dog, and we were going to head out for a walk, and my phone rang, and I was offered the job there and then. So I'd only just made it back home.
So because I had been offered the job at the same time. as you. So they must have made the phone call. They made their final decision. You know, so so that would have been round about this kind of time of year, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it must have been around, I think, I want to say the 20th or 21st of January.
Yeah,
so
it was around about that time. You know, so I suppose my first being aware that you existed, not by name or who you were, what you looked like, was I got offered a job and got given a start date, and then they contact me again to have to change it, to move the start date because, you know, you had to work notice or something, you know, adult like that.
Yes, yeah.
And I remember that moment going, oh, you know, I hope this is not a sign of things to come, you know. So in that sense, actually, I was probably a wee bit ahead of you, maybe for the first and only time. So I remember, and so I had done work with Visit Scotland previously. I had done 2 summers as mobile tourist information.
Say it.
My official job title.
Yes, say
was
it.
Coup Visor.
That's such a great. It's such a great title.
It's the best, and it was the best job ever. So I wasn't giving people advice on coups, Highland or otherwise. But we travelled around doing mobile tourist information. So, which involved me going all over Scotland, and I mean, it was amazing. I did that for two summer stints. Literally got to visit every corner of my home country, which was phenomenal. So I had a bit of insight into Visit Scotland, but yeah, I remember walking in, and clocking you and cataloguing you, if that's the word. And I do remember, like, it really stuck with me for some reason when you looked at me, and reasons for this might become more apparent as people get to know me a bit better on the podcast, was that you looked at me and there was zero sense that you were judging or assessing or anything. It was a welcoming look, you know, hi type thing, you know, and that stuck with me. And I'm not sure if I've ever told you that.
No,
before.
you've never said that before.
Yeah, so for me that was it, you know. I'm a person who, as it turns out, possibly throughout my entire life, who has been really self-conscious of how I've been judged or how I've been perceived and whatnot. So for me, that registered with me. So that was kind of like, so that's how we met. Yeah. You know, and where we met. So it was through work. So Visit Scotland kind of brought us together. They did. In that. They got
quite a handful.
They did.
Yeah.
Yeah, on all fronts.
2 handfuls, on actually.
On all fronts, yeah. So, and that was it. And the first time we went for a bite to eat together, can you remember where?
No, we went to Wagamama's.
Yeah, and that was a first for me. It was the first time ever in Wagamama's, and I loved it. It was really good. It was also my first experience of seeing you turn red.
Yes.
With spicy food.
Yeah, so being Scandinavian, I don't have the best tolerance for spice. I don't mind spice as long as it's warm, like that warming spice. Yeah. I don't like burning. I don't want it to burn. I don't want it to be painful. But I react to it, which means that I go bright red in the face and down my neck and out onto my chest and collarbones and like,
So I do remember that was really cool. Conversation came easy.
Yes,
I think. You know, I mean, I can yak for Scotland literally anyway. You know, in most situations, but it just felt conversation felt easy and comfortable, and I was like, that's really good, because if we're going to be working together, and at that point in time, we weren't going to be working together. The job was a very solo job. It was just we were starting
exactly
in the same role at the same time.
Yeah, the job was very, very on your own, out there, out and about in Scotland. But they did sort of indicate that people who had trained together had some sort of like connection or link, like they learned to kind of rely on each other and use each other on sounding boards. So I think because that was made apparent that, you work on your own, but actually the person that you train with and the people who train you, the people that you end up shadowing, will most likely become part of, your everyday work life.
Because they always hired in pairs. That seemed to be the thing. They always hired for that role in pairs, which I found a strange thing at the time, considering you don't work in pairs or whatever, but I can kind of get the sense of it.
Oh no, that made perfect sense to me.
In terms of having somebody at the same point as you. So that was our first meet and our first connection. Yeah. That meal was probably the first time we had a chance to kind of connect. So first impressions. What was your first impression of me when you see me kind of strutting down the street in my
very confident.
Yeah.
I know you just said that you've always had issues with like the way that you've been perceived in that, but like very confident.
Yeah.
And like just having lived a lot.
Yeah.
Well, not like but not in terms of like your age, but like all the different things that you've gone. So like during that first week, when we were traveling into the city centre for that big meeting that made our brain melt and run out of our ears.
Our first introduction to the industry relationship managers.
Yes, yeah. We were talking about some of the stuff that you've done, and we can maybe touch on that a little later.
Yeah.
Or like in another episode, but I was just like, okay, wow, there's someone here who's also had a lot of different jobs and don't mind doing different things, and so my first impression of you was also probably fairly similar to somebody of confidence, because you had been out there and travelled a lot, and and especially as a lone female out there travelling a lot, that's brave. Well,
there's bravery attached to that.
But I've never travelled on my own. Like I've never gone on a holiday or like done backpacking or like any of those kind of things. I've always travelled for a job. So there was always someone perceived trustworthy in the destination or wherever I was travelling to, who would be there.
Yeah. My first impressions of you were somebody who was worldly wise. I suppose is a good way to put it, because you'd been to a lot of places, you'd seen a lot of things around the world, and whilst I'm not one that I wasn't like rooted to Scotland. I've done a little bit of travel, but
always for holidays.
But always for holidays, yeah, always for holidays, and always to safe, I suppose, holiday locations. So
I like the quotation marks.
Yeah, so it was package holiday, in the sun, or ski holiday,
or with your scouts.
Or with the scouts when I was younger. It was always that kind of group travel holiday type thing. So so whilst I had been to a few places, I hadn't necessarily seen many places.
Okay.
So
I like that distinction.
Yeah. So
to some extent it's the same for me, right? Because I was either working or studying in the places that I were.
Yeah.
So like in Turkey, I lived and worked in 3 different places in Turkey on 3 different tourist destinations.
Yeah.
And I got to experience it as a local, but never as a tourist. Yeah. And it was the same in India when I worked in Goa in India. I got to experience that not as a local because that is a very different experience. But I got to experience that as someone living there, not as a tourist.
Yes.
And some of the girls who were there with me at a later stage where I was in a senior position, they got to travel around. They went in to see Taj Mahal and, they went to experience other things. Like they went on like a tiger sanctuary trip and things like that. That I didn't have the opportunity to do. So actually a little bit in the same boat there.
Yeah, but you were there for more than a week or 2 weeks.
Correct.
Sitting on,
yes.
You were just constantly sitting on a sunbed or skiing.
Yes, collectively I was about a year and a half in Turkey in 2 bits. Yeah. And about 6 months in India.
Where I was generally 2 weeks pissed up in Tenerife. Or skiing, and then skiing is a different thing. But what you're seeing is the ski slopes and stuff like that. Yeah, we did a couple of day trips out and stuff like that whilst we were there. But you're seeing a very controlled, organized kind of version of a place. So so that was kind of like first kind of impressions, kind of thing. So. What do you think drew us together as friends? I mean, there was clearly we found it easy to chat and talk and whatnot, but there's lots of people in my life that I could fall in that category that wouldn't necessarily fall into the friends kind of category. What do you think drew us together as friends?
I think initially there was a little bit of a trauma bond.
Yeah.
Because we just started the job, and 2 weeks later we got sent home.
Yep.
Well, we were in Inverness, so you were literally just like 2 minutes down the road, whereas I was 3 hours away.
Yeah, I think that was, and I'm probably stepping into what I was going to maybe talk about a bit later on, but who cares about order when you do things raw and unedited?
Raw and unedited.
I think for me there was that night where lockdown happened. We were doing a training visit at a hotel in Inverness.
Yes.
2-star hotel in Inverness. It was a lovely hotel, and
it was an acceptable hotel.
No, it had charm. It had charm.
It had character.
Charm. I think it had a certain charm, and this is like, if I can put my QTA hat back on for just
then you need to explain what QTA is, but because we've actually said what the job we did.
Oh yeah, so the job that we were employed to do was called Quality Tourism Advisor. So we were essentially employed to travel around Scotland, giving primarily accommodation for us, their star ratings. So if you've ever stayed in a hotel in Scotland, we were the people who were going along and seeing how many stars that they should have.
Yeah, so looking at their cleanliness and the quality of their sheets and their breakfast and their curtains and the art on the wall and their customer service.
Customer service, yeah. So it's absolutely mind-boggling how many things kind of go into an assessment.
Into that, So put your QTA hat back on.
I will put that hat on for 2 seconds and just say, if you were arrived at a 2-star hotel, guest house, whatever it be in Scotland at that time, that they would be perfectly okay.
Yes, that is correct.
They were sanitary, so they were clean. The food they were serving up was palatable. It was edible. It just didn't have all the
bells and
whistles that you might expect from. They
were comfortable enough beds.
Yeah,
they were clean. Yes, yeah.
So 2-star hotel, and we arrived. We were the only guests that arrived.
Yes.
And he was very surprised to see us, because everybody else had called off because we had this. We knew it was coming. We knew it was coming soon. We just didn't necessarily expect it that night. Scotland was going into lockdown, so we arrived.
Well, all of the UK were going into lockdown. This was Boris Johnson.
Yeah. So we arrived, checked in, get the news that we're going into lockdown, and get the call to say, if you want to head home, head home. But it was a 2.5, 3 hour drive for you to get back.
Well, it was a 3 hour drive because I was living a bit further away.
For you, and that just wouldn't have been sensible, especially given the fact that we'd just been landed with this news that we were being locked down. So we decided to stay on the hotel, and despite my staying literally 12-minute walk from the hotel, I decided that I wasn't going to abandon you in the hotel. And I
appreciate that.
On your own that night. So I decided to stay and traumatise you in an entirely different way.
You definitely did.
So, so anybody who's seen The Shining and
Jack Nicholson
and here's Johnny. So our rooms were back to back.
Yeah, so headboard to headboard in different rooms.
Yeah, so Chapman on the wall and here Johnny and sending you messages and stuff like that. So which was, for me at the time, it was hilarious.
Until the following morning.
And I'm pretty sure when I tell people this story, they don't believe me, but I
hand on heart.
We headed down to go and have breakfast, and as we walked down, there was a red tricycle sitting in the lobby.
Yes.
And no words were needed. We just kind of looked at each other.
Yes.
So that was kind of, for me, that was the moment where I went, do you know what? Like, that was a shared frequency moment.
It was.
That was a shared frequency moment, because our humor in that moment, our thoughts in that moment and whatnot, just like
totally in sync. Yeah.
So for me, I think that was, as you said, it was a trauma moment.
Well, for me, the trauma bond came a little later, I think. Oh, the dog is moving about. For me, the trauma came a little bit later, when I had arrived home and we were all set up with stuff to work from home. And we made it a routine to call each other first thing in the morning and just like do a check-in.
That's the dog having a drink.
And there is the dog. She will be pattering around while we're doing some of these recordings.
But of course, everybody will already have listened to episode 1 and have been forewarned.
I've been forewarned. There's a dog in the living room whilst we're recording. Yes. So we were having a conversation one day, and I was feeling very uncertain. And I was like, "What do you think is going to happen? Do you think we're going to lose our job? We're the last ones through the door. Are we going to be the first ones out?"
Yep.
So we had that conversation, and you were very cool, calm, and collected about it. Again, because you'd had that experience with them, worked with them before. Where I was like, oh, okay, and then you were like, well, have a conversation with your manager.
Yep.
And I did. So for me, I think it was that, like, you just came across really dependable, and I've not had that a lot in my life, someone who, I could truly rely on.
Yeah.
And I think that is one of the cornerstones for me, is that I know that I can rely on you if there's something that I need help with, or something that I need to talk through, or something very practical, like having a new bathroom done.
Oh, that's a story for that's an episode on its own as well.
That's a whole nother trauma. So like for me, I think it was that, and it came from a trauma bond, but it developed into something completely different for me.
Well, I think, and I do like to think that we would have still become friends.
Yes.
Even without lockdown.
Yeah.
You know, we had, there's so many stories. I mean, we should probably dedicate an entire episode to or 2 episodes to stories from our quality assurance
QTA job. We
days.
can definitely consider that.
We can, because we no longer work there.
And the job doesn't
because
exist.
the job doesn't exist anymore. Unfortunately, for those who would have quite fancied that as a profession to seek it out.
The thing is, you know, it was a very unique job. Yeah, it was a very unique job, and on paper, it sounds brilliant, right? Traveling around Scotland, you know, being paid to stay in some really wonderful accommodation options throughout Scotland. Some not necessarily wonderful accommodation options, you know, doing assessments on food and doing really nice restaurants. Like, I've done a wonderful, wonderful restaurant, well, a couple of wonderful, wonderful restaurants in Edinburgh. So on paper, it sounds fantastic. And for some of the people who had done it for 20 odd years, it was the perfect job. But, you know, being someone who have never really felt rooted, never really felt truly at home anywhere, and then in the process of whilst doing this job, buying my own house, actually settling down, I mean, that was a huge milestone that I still don't think I fully understand. So maybe that's something we can talk about on another episode.
Because in that regard, our stories have kind of turned tail.
They have. You
know,
we've flip-flopped.
You know, so
so it sounds really lovely, but then I started to feel really comfortable and really rooted and really safe and secure in the physical space that I was in. So leaving my house and my dog, and at that time I was living on my own. My housemate had, you know, moved on. She'd moved a little further south. You know, I would drop my dog off either Sunday evening or first thing Monday morning, and then I wouldn't pick her up again until Friday around lunchtime, Friday afternoon, and then I would drop her off again. So I would actually only be with her on the weekends every week. You know, that was emotionally hard for me.
I think during the whole pandemic thing, you know, I think we found a rhythm.
We did. Oh yeah, we did.
We found a rhythm. We found a frequency.
We found a frequency. This is, I do apologize in advance. This is going to be a bit that's going to continue throughout every single episode. But I think we're very good to working in tandem, right? We balance each other out on a lot of things, and I think we figure that out very quickly. We think very similar, but we also think very differently. But I think because we're so good at creating space for each other and being very open-minded, you know, there's no judgment. You know, before it was a trend, we listen, we don't judge. And sometimes we definitely judge. I definitely judge. And I judge you out loud, but not in a judgy way.
But I think that's a very different thing, to judge somebody out loud. It is healthy, because you then...
I think if you do it in
what you're saying to the how I read it is like when you do it, and I do a bit of it the other way. You know, and it's just like, I'm open to be challenged on this. Am I right?
Oh, I mean, one of the best conversations we've had was about the thing that's over there in the corner, the little addition to the sofa, the poof.
Or the poof or the poofet.
Yes.
You know, so yeah, absolutely. But it's absolutely that, and it's just like, but my whole life has been like, I like to challenge and be challenged on my thinking.
I think that's why we go really well together. I want honesty. I want brutal honesty, and I want dependability. And that's what you offer, right? You offer me dependability. Like, I can really depend on you.
Yeah.
But you are also always honest with me.
Yeah.
In both goods and bad ways.
Yeah.
You know, I sometimes hear things that I am not quite ready for, and never negative things, but like positive things where I'm like, oh, never thought about that.
Yeah.
But you're also always honest with me, you know, about other things. Like when I ask for advice where you're like, no, that's a terrible idea.
Yeah.
So that's what you offer me, whereas I take no bullshit. And that might be the first thing in this podcast where that should have been censored. But, you know, there was a disclaimer in episode 1. And if you haven't listened to it, I'm terribly sorry. But no, I take no bullshit. I take no prisoners. Yeah. And I will challenge you on things where I'd be like, what do you mean foreigner? What do you mean foreign? It's in foreign. That's one of our most recent conversations.
That is. But as I say, and to me that's healthy.
Yes,
you know,
I think so.
And I wish I had that my whole life. You know, so So, I mean, we're probably gonna have to kind of touch on some more of this as we go on with the podcast, because as I say, there is so much more that we could kind of dip into.
Is there a last thing that you want to touch on about, like, you know, finding our frequency, how we came to the stage that we're at today, like our friendship? Is there a key moment for you?
So that where I knew that our friendship was like, as I say, actually quite early on, that as someone that I thought that I could be friends with was that hotel stay where, you know, and whatnot, where I just connection of frequencies and whatnot, but and I think it's do you know what, there absolutely is a moment that really, really hugely solidified our friendship. I think if it's the moment that I think it is, I think we should save it for another podcast, because it's
another episode,
because it was also the moment that could have broken our friendship.
That moment. Okay. So, yes. We will save that for another episode. Because that's an episode in itself. Yeah. I think.
Yeah. So I
thought you were talking about the message that I had sent where I got a little tipsy with one of our friends who used to live down.
Which one was that? Like, how do you wipe your bum?
No, that was a very relatively recent conversation.
Okay. Was it the?
I don't even remember what it was.
Are porn stars actors, or is it a way of life question?
That might be it.
Yeah. It's yeah. I interrupt this transmission to give you the question correctly and in full. The message I received was a question of the day. In your opinion, are porn stars displaying their true self, or are they playing a character and the porn star persona can therefore be considered fictional? To which I responded, I'd say playing a character, but I don't know any to have allowed me to test this view. P.S. That might have been one of the most random questions I have ever been asked. And I received this message about 3 weeks after we first met. But like these, and it was great. These questions were coming from so early in our friendship. From, you know, just like,
well, how do you wipe your bum? That was within the last year and a half. Yeah. But I don't remember is a porn star a profession, or what was the question I asked you?
Or a way of life.
Yeah. Is it a profession or a vocation?
A vocation, yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember that question, so that must have been very early on. But yeah, I do that, right? I don't have a big panel of friends, but I do have some friends where I will do a little bit of a survey. Yeah.
I think what a good kind of closing off kind of question, I suppose, on this episode would be, if someone asked you to explain our friendship, what would you say?
It's none of your business because you won't understand it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Exactly the same.
Yeah. And we have had that a bit, right?
Yeah,
People either don't understand or won't understand or can't understand. You know, we are very close.
Yeah.
We are very close. You know, if I was to talk to someone very open-minded and non-judgmental, I would say, well, Don is absolutely a life partner.
Yeah.
You know, someone who will be there, like a lifer. I think I watched an episode of the Kardashians recently, and Kim Kardashian refers to a group of her friends as lifers.
Okay.
You know, and you're a lifer.
Yeah.
For me.
For me, in my generation, lifer was somebody who was never getting out of prison again.
That too.
So
exactly, like, you are never released from the prison sentence that is my friendship.
I'm good with
there
that.
are no bail. Like there is no bail.
Yeah, I'm good with that. I'm good with that. So like, I think that's a good jump off spot for this. So yeah, so I'm with you. It's like if anybody asks me to explain our friendship, then they're sailing close to not being a part of my
cruising for a bruising.
My friendship group. You know, because you should never. It's not something you should ever have to explain.
No, and justify. Right. I feel like there's been a couple of times where I have been asked to justify or clarify what our friendship is, and it's our friendship.
Yeah. Full stop.
But it's exactly. But it's very unique. It's something I've never experienced before. I think it's very healthy.
Yeah.
And I think it is. I think it's very true.
It's honest, yeah, and I think that's in a nutshell.
Yeah.
That's it. So cool, right? So let's just sign off. Let's see if we can make a better job of the sign off from on this one than we did from the first one.
Yes.
So thank you for tuning in to Shared Frequencies in the Space Between.
We hope that our conversation today has helped you find a little more clarity in your own space between, whatever that might look like.
And remember, it's okay to be a work in progress. We're all just figuring it out one frequency at a time.
So, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget... Wow. Okay, we'll try that again. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who might also want to listen in.
So until next time, keep tuning in and finding the space that works for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.